Clubbing. I see so many videos on YouTube describing how clubbing and going out to bars is a huge waste of time if you're a guy, how it's basically the IRL version of Tinder, and how you're just gonna get mogged, yada yada. So today I just want to give my 2 cents on this whole thing as someone who has tried this myself for a good bit of time.
Yikes, Drathan. Have you tried being confident?
First of all, we need to know what I mean by quote-unquote worth it. I think the vast majority of people watching this want to go out to the club for one reason and one reason only. And that is to get laid. So today we're going to take a look at whether my bar/club phase that pretty much lasted all of sophomore year of college was really worth it in order to, you guessed it, get laid. See, the thing with me is that my parents never let me join a frat since they were super anti-alcohol and super overly protective of me. That combined with the fact that I was basically a loser who didn't get invited to parties meant I basically spent the vast majority of my time alone during the weekends, especially my freshman year of college. I remember after an incident with one of my one-itises, library girl, I finally ended up going out to bars and clubs near my college frequently. In fact, I spent nearly all my weekends sophomore year going out by myself. And during this time, I basically began to study up on basic PUA game to run at the bars and clubs, while also looks maxing like crazy. I think in that last year alone, I've improved my looks more than I did all my other years in high school combined, just to give you an idea of how much I've actually improved. But yeah, during the fall semester of 2023, I really just spent most of it trying to make up for what happened that summer with my one-itis Blair. And at this point in my life, I was still trying to get over her, and I figured the best time to do this was just to go out to the bar and the clubs. It took some courage, but after reading up on basic PUA guides, teaching guys how to get over their anxiety, I began going out by myself, trying to hook up with girls and forget about my sorrows. And in my mind, I wasn't really connecting with any of the girls I saw on the daily in my classes. No matter what I did, they just didn't seem to be interested. So I said to myself, hey, maybe I should just focus on getting laid instead. And like I said earlier, my freshman year of college, I never really went out at all. I spent the vast majority of my weekends playing Call of Duty with my roommate Jake. He was my buddy from high school, and I thought by rooming with him, I would have a built-in friend to go out to functions with. And I guess this was wrong, because all this guy ever did was just stay indoors all day, just in front of a screen, watching football, some stupid game, I don't know. In fact, that's mainly the reason why he flunked out of college. He was too obsessed with playing video games, half-assing his classes, all while not working a job, and eventually the final nail in the coffin for this guy was him failing one of his online gen ed English classes, of all things, just because he wanted to play Elden Ring instead. And as clueless as he was, I do kind of envy him, because at least with his cope, which was video games, he got something out of it. But with me, I just wanted to fit in. I wanted to get that social experience, and he didn't really have that in him, so he was pretty happy just sit inside all day. And I already had a miserable time in high school, getting rejected at prom, getting mogged on the cross-country team, and feeling like a loser day in and day out. So in college, I tried to go full send and get Jake to go out to the clubs and frat parties with me. And of course, he constantly declined just to play Call of Duty in the lecture halls on campus at night, since the Wi-Fi in our dorms was just so garbage. Of course, I had nothing better to do at the time, so I just went with him. And I must have sank hours into playing COD, getting all the attachments for the guns, getting all the skins, and to be honest with you, I do look back at these times with Jake somewhat fondly. But every time I walked around campus at night, I couldn't help but see all the normal people having fun and going out to the bars and clubs. And eventually my sophomore year, I realized I just needed to man up and go out. So when I first started going out on my own, I began by just drinking drinks at the bar. But as you soon realize, this is actually a very expensive course of action. I would be spending upwards of $40 a night on drinks just to feel slightly hammered. So that is one con, the price. And people at the clubs know that it's all filled with desperate people, mostly desperate guys, that are willing to shell out their beta bucks just to feel social. And this is exactly how they profit. Now, my favorite bar and club to enter changed pretty frequently throughout my bar era. At first, I liked a good cross between a bar and a club, and towards the middle, I preferred to go to sit-down bars with better lighting, since I felt girls could analyze my face better. And yes, I know that sounds extremely sped when I say it out loud, but that's actually how I thought. I'm like, oh, they can see my face in full light, they can analyze it, they can really see how much of a mocker I am. Oh my god, that is so cringe. But at the tail end of my bar phase, I went out to this nightclub, a high-energy type place, where you could probably hook up the easiest. And this place I'm talking about was a complete clusterfuck, filled to the brim with people in a dark setting, and it's probably the closest bar to where I lived as well. And in fact, the last time I went in there, which was 4 weeks ago, they began charging guys $6 while all the girls got in for free just to maintain the ratio. So even at the door, the odds are completely against you. And mind you, this was on a Thursday night of all nights, so I can only imagine how bad a Friday or Saturday night would be. And eventually, I discovered the art of pre-gaming and just started drinking at home and then walking to clubs instead, so that I would already be a bit tipsy when I started the night. And this worked a little too well, and for every weekends for 5 months straight, I was drinking probably upwards of 30 drinks a week, which is not only expensive, but devastating for my body. Because if you look it up, the average guy, I think, should be drinking less than 15 a week. 15 is considered way too much. Twice that level every week is just insane. That could not be good for me. I'm gonna probably die at like the age of 40 now or something. But no, trust me, all of this stuff does come back to bite you in the ass eventually. I've heard horror stories of people in their late 20s needing like liver transplants, and many of them just started out by drinking in their teens in social settings and eventually nuking their bodies over the course of a few years. But at this point in my life, I did not give a fuck. I did not care in the slightest. I went full send and was so desperate to hook up with a girl that I said, fuck my liver, fuck my wallet, I just want to experience this. So I kept going. Furthermore, I kept thinking to myself that a few years of doing this in college wouldn't really affect me all that badly, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I woke up hungover so many mornings, just in agonizing pain, feeling sick to my stomach. Just thinking about it makes me never want to touch alcohol again, or any substance for that matter. But again, at this point in my life, I was so fueled by the desperation to fit in that I did not care. I wanted to see what I was missing out on. And at first, drinking certainly lowered my inhibition quite a bit, and I could talk to people just fine in cases where I'd normally be scared. But eventually got to the point near the end of my clubbing saga where I got so scared to talk to girls, even several drinks in. I'd already built a natural tolerance that was pretty high at this point, so I'd need literally dozens of drinks to feel anything at all. And of course, there were times where I went too far out and blacked out by myself as well. And thank God I didn't get fucking mugged or blown up or something in the complete nightmare city I live in. And another thing is the awkwardness of coming and going to places by yourself. It really isn't all that fun. Sometimes I'd have people ask me if I was alright, and I just had to lie and say I was looking for my friends, or that my friends threw up and went back home or something like that, and I was just trying to enjoy the rest of my night alone. Most of the time, I was still too afraid to approach, even after drinking so much. And I would spend the vast majority of my time just walking around, drink in hand, just watching shenanigans unfold. Sometimes I'd watch as girls would tell some dude to fuck off when he asked out one of them, or in rare cases, I'd see some getting decked for asking out the wrong girl. And these things only heighten my approach anxiety. And I would usually leave my house and walk to the bars around 10 p.m. since that's when they were most active on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. This didn't take into account the time I would take to pregame, drinking a 6-pack of beer. Most of the nightlife establishments closed around 2 a.m., so this gave me around 4 hours to just walk around looking for girls to chat up. And like I said, I was usually really scared to talk to girls. I remember there was this one time where I legit spent like an hour mustering up the courage to ask a girl to let me hit her vape. It got that bad. Eventually, I remember one night a girl talked to me and we just started chatting the whole night. I tried my best to try to escalate and she seemed fine with it, but eventually she whispered something to a guy nearby and ran into her Uber. And then the guy came up to me and told me that she didn't want me or something like that. And then the Uber sped off. And it was really funny because I was just sitting there cursing at myself because I was really thinking in my head, this is the chance. This is really happening. I was really surprised and really happy. And as I was just sitting there in the dust by myself, my buddy Yusuf just came out of nowhere. He just spawned thin air or something. And he just started talking to me, having like the time of his life because he was obviously super hammered as well. And I was just sitting there trying to put on a good front, just smiling and nodding, trying to maintain composure while being completely devastated and dead inside. And this girl kept texting me over Snap, and at first I thought I could salvage this, but the next morning she deleted all her texts and I realized it was over. And this definitely left a bad taste in my mouth since she was definitely my type. And I remember I told my friend Ned, and he was like, oh yeah dude, that really sucks because it wasn't even your fault. And I was thinking about it, it really wasn't. Everything went perfectly fine and she seemed interested. But the bad memories definitely stick with you worse than the good memories. And I think that kind of applies to all of life, but especially in these types of scenarios when you try to approach. Maybe if I was better looking and got more success stories than rejections, I'd feel a different way, but no, I definitely think about that memory more than my good memories. But the good news is I eventually did get laid a few weeks later. I was just so frustrated, and there's this one girl I talked to earlier that night while I was doing my subhuman night ghouling, and I asked her if she wanted to hook up, and she said yes. So eventually we walked back to her dorm to drop off her friend, and went back to my place, and we did the deed. And the following weekend I got laid again with a different girl. And so it seemed my luck was really good that week for some reason, I don't know. But keep in mind that these were 2 hookups out of several weeks of just doing this monkeying around and clowning, and this shit was eating up so much of my time. All week, all I could think about was just trying again and again at the bar. It became like gambling to me at this point. I couldn't focus on anything else. And earlier this school year, I was ready to start round 2 of subhuman night clubbing. But as soon as I went in, it just didn't feel the same. I was tired of spending my money on shitty drinks that didn't even feel good anymore. It was embarrassing running into people I knew with huge groups of others. I couldn't just lie to them and be like, oh, my friends are coming, because they probably knew I had no friends to go with. I remember it was just brutal to see all the other normal people dancing and having fun, leaving with attractive girls while I just stood in the corner wondering what next stupid looks maxing item I'd have to invest in to yield a better outcome next week when I went out. And at this point, I was sick of having to compete with other guys, walking home in the cold alone, and just having meaningless and empty conversations with girls that led nowhere. And I remember the last time I went out, I was like, man, I would much rather be in the comfort of my shitty trap house cooking up a shittier video. So I just up and left when it was 11:30 p.m. And this was a huge contrast from when I normally stay there till 2 a.m., which was closing time. Seeing as those days are well behind me, especially after my hospital incident, if you haven't seen that video, It's my last one, explains what happened. I guess I can answer the question now. Was my nighttime clubbing phase worth it? And the answer is yes, only because I got laid twice from it. The fast-paced life I was living that was killing my grades and my time was worth it for that and that only. But going out for weekends on end, wasting so much time and energy is just something I don't want to do anymore. I'm tired of alcohol, and I'm tired of going to some shitty club for the millionth time in a row. I think it's something that everyone should try at some point, but I do think you should quit while you're ahead. I definitely regret it to some extent. The night I got lucky, the second time at least, I should have just called it and never returned. But the hope that I could have recreated that success was so alluring to me that I kept going and going. And I think a year ago, if you asked me if clubbing was worth it, I would have said yes 100 times over. But after getting it out of my system, I have zero interest in going back, spending hours of time doing literally nothing but drinking and listening to shitty remixes of pop music. Now I think clubbing is something I'd only do with friends, and lucky for me, I basically have no friends, at least ones that do fun things. So I guess I don't have to worry about that anymore. That's basically it for this one. I decided I wanted to do one more video for this week, seeing as I've been absent for quite a bit of time, and hopefully this makes up for it. I'll catch you guys all in the next one.
This is a certified PSL classic.